Record it. All right, let's do it.
Right.
Hi, everybody. Let's all sing. I've been to Romamu. I've been to BJ. I've searched all over for a place to pray. I found the mosh pit and knew that this was it. I am a Moshnik and I'm here to stay. And I'm turning gray. Everybody sing with me and Neil Young. I found community that is in tune with me, singing and dancing in our Zoom agog. Some contemplation mixed with elation. I Schnick and I'm here to stay. And I'm turning gray. Renee's not turning gray, just me. A chance to meet you. A chance to greet you, Elizabeth and Rick. A time to deepen what it means to belong, Susan Freibert. Let's have some fun tonight and spread some joy at Hanukkah light. I am a Moshnik and I'm here to stay. And we're all turning a little bit gray. Let's listen to Hoff and Shemayim. The Holy Harmonica from Bob Hoffman, hanging out there with all of the luminaries of the rock and roll and Woodstock world. Okay, all seriousness aside, welcome. Mary Haber is here, and who else is here? Susan Chaya is here. Okay, and Andrew Gilbert is here, and soon, and Renee is hiding, soon hopefully we'll have more people who are not presenting tonight than who are presenting tonight. But that doesn't matter, because I'm going to have a good time, and that is all that matters. So, without further ado, I want to present to you our very, what are we getting, a light show, Devorah? Well, present to you our very first offering will be from none other than David Daniel Clipper! Woohoo! And his dancing Chanukiah! I like that. Don't you think that's great, the
I do
Chanukiah?
like that.
It's pretty cool.
Cool.
Okay, all yours, buddy.
So it was the first night of Hanukkah, and Rachel, 10 years old, was really excited to get the Hanukkah and the candles. And she started to walk towards the window in the living room that faced the street. And her mother said, "Rachel, honey, I think this year we're going to light the candles in the kitchen." And she said, "But they're supposed to be lit in the windows. And I always loved to see all the Hanukkahot in the windows around us." Rachel and her family had been living in a very Jewish neighborhood in the Bronx, and now they had moved to the middle of the Midwest, where there were very few Jews. And so, of course, the mother was worried about it. But Rachel was heartbroken. She said, "But we have to do this. We always light the candles in the window." So she said, "Okay, we can do that." And she whispered to her husband, "It's just two candles. Maybe they'll think they're Christmas lights." So they say the blessings and they light the candles. And she really enjoys it. And she's hoping that somebody is going to see them and say something to her at school the next day. And in fact, Brad Brown, the little boy who lives right across the street, comes up to her and says, "What are those candles you have in the window? Where'd you get them?" And she said, "Well, we used to live in the Bronx. We could get them anywhere, but we had to drive 20 miles to get them." And he said, "Well, my dad's the fire chief. Are they fireproof?" And then he walked away. And Rachel felt really bad. So she still persisted. And the third night, she lit the candles in the window. Nothing. The fourth night, she lit the candles and nothing's happening, and she's feeling really bad. And then the phone rings, and her mother answers it and says, "Rachel, it's for you." And it was Brad Brown. And he said, "Why do you have to have the candles in the window?" And she said, "Well, it's part of the story. It's the Maccabees. We're trying." Right in the middle, he says, "The message has been delivered." And he hangs up. And she goes back and she's looking at the candles. Two of them are burned down more than the others. And she's feeling really bad. And then she sees them reflected in her window. And then as she looks closer, she realizes that that's not reflected in her window, that the house across the street has lit candles for the fourth night of Hanukkah, Brad Brown and his family. And her mother said, "There are miracles of Hanukkah light."
Thank you, Dee Dee. And welcome to those of you who have joined us. Bruce and Alessandra are in the same room. This is the first Hanukkah miracle. Rep Sandy is here, and Diane Modell is here as well. And I think I've welcomed everybody else. And Rick and Elizabeth, they're usually sitting in the same room together, so that's not a miracle, but it is a wonder. Jeff Bassick, Rabbi Jeff Bassick, and we have known each other longer than anybody here, including me and Renee. Jeff is expecting his third grandchild any moment. And so what we say is B'sha'a Tova. It should have happened at a good time, at the right time. As opposed to saying to me and Renee, Mazal Tov, because we had our third grandchild, as Jeff is expecting his third grandchild. And so it's lovely. Jeff has taught with us before, and tonight is no exception. So please welcome Rabbi Jeff Bassick.
You know, the funny thing is that I still laugh at his jokes. I don't want to, but I do. So
That's the second Hanukkah miracle.
I know, right? So I have a few remarks, but one is just to amplify David Daniel's story. So, you know, what's the answer to darkness? We all know that you can't rail against the darkness. You light a candle or something, right? So the real mitzvah of Hanukkah is meforsam et hanes, to publicize the miracle, to spread the light. So on Pesach, we publicize vertically through time, through the generations, the story, a story, and it's very home-based. But this one we publicize horizontally across space into the world. And the Chanukiot used to be placed outside the doorway, right? Then it was brought inside the doorway, and now it's in the window. But the point is, of course, to spread it into the world, to leforsem, right? To publicize, spread the light. And I think it's the same idea with a candle that's associated with the human soul, the human spirit, right? There's that proverb that says, Ner Adonai nishmat adam, the light of God is the spirit of a person, right? Neshama is one of those words for soul. So I have a little bit of a writing exercise to share with you. So I hope you can take a second to find something to write with, pen and paper. Take a minute. And, you know, I learned long ago that just because things are simple doesn't mean they're not profound. And sometimes early childhood education is really just great education for everybody. So we're going to focus on the candle. or an oil lamp, maybe.
Welcome.
And I'll walk you through a bit of an exercise that you can jot down and maybe learn something about yourself so that this little light of mine, I'm going to make it shine, right? Just like the community publicizes its hope and faith, right? Then we too have to shine. And to borrow something from the Greeks used to say that everybody has a bit of a genius within them, meaning their own unique talent or gift. So I can just hear Mark singing, "This little light of mine, I'm going to make it shine." Don't. Okay, so does everyone have something to write with? And I'll walk you through something. So what does an oil lamp consist of? The spark, the flame that initiates, right? The creative spark, the whatever it is that makes your juices flow or lights your fire. Don't sing that, Mark.
He knows me too well.
I know the song. So the spark, the fire, the wick that gives it form, and then the fuel, or let's call it the oil, right? Or in our time, the paraffin. But let's say oil. So there's the fire, which is ner, nun resh, the wick, which is patil, pei, tav, yud, lamed, and the oil, which is shemen, shin, mem, nun. So the first letters of each of these three words, nun, fe, shin, is what? Nefesh, right? Another word for one of the aspects, one of the layers of our spirit, right? Our soul. So I want you to ask and answer on paper. What is it that lights your fire? What gets your juices flowing? What could be your creative spark? There's a fourth element that we'll get to after these three. But what gets you going, right? In a thrilling, juicy, enthusiastic, alive, all cylinders firing kind of way. What form might that take? You know, as we are all of a certain age and maturity, it's more likely that we can make sense of our lives, our unique lives, more now than ever before. So what sparks you? It makes you feel alive. What form does that take? And then what sustains it? What is the fuel? What is needed for sustaining it? Spark, form, and fuel. Ner, patil, shemen. And finally, and I I do this in honor of Mark and the community that he and Renee have created and sustain and lead. What's the air or the context in which you can shine your light, in which you can thrive, right? We all need a context. You know, when I wanted to lead a more Jewish calendar life, I was active in a synagogue. That was the context. So what is your context? What is the air that you need? Like fish need water. As an aside, there was a child who once asked, this real life, this is not a story, a child who asked, what happens to the flame when you blow it out? Brilliant question, right? Like what? So the only answer that can be given, I think, I mean, the only answer I came up with was that the conditions are no longer obtaining for the fire to thrive. Whether it's no more fuel or no more spark, or it doesn't have a form to take, or it doesn't have air, right? A context. So much in the way that the Jewish people can say, we collectively maintain hope in the darkness, or we declare a little faith out into the world, a little dream out into the world. So must we individually do the same, right? To be a little candle. And assert yourself in that way, like be yourself, right? Be Mark, be Renee, be Gail and Rick and Elizabeth, be yourselves, right? Because we all have some kind of, well, Ner Adonai Nishmat Adam, right? A divine spark. Did you all write something down? Shake your head. Okay, so this is then just the beginning of developing this idea. But we all need the spark, the form, the fuel, and the context. And I think that's a good little early childhood education kind of exercise that can sustain us now in ripe age. So Chag Urim Sameach, right? Happy festival of light. Be the light. I think I can stop there. Thank you.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Hey, Miriam, who's on the phone? This little light of mine.
My daughter.
I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. You know that it would be untrue. You know that I would be a liar. Come on, baby, light my fire. I had to get all those songs in. Jeff, thank you so much for that sweet, sweet teaching.
Thank you, guys.
I couldn't help but notice that all the things that light my fire, the minute that I wrote down baseball, Judy joined us. So it must have been a sign from God. And it could have been a steal sign or a take sign. It could have been any number of signs, which is why baseball is such a holy sport. So you must be wondering what's going to happen next. As you can see from and Rep Sandy's here, and Gail, welcome. And Scott is hiding back there somewhere. It's going to be an evening of storytelling and teaching and maybe some surprises as well. Um, our next presenter is going to be none other than Mark Gronish. Now, watch this, Mark, because I like to call you our magical mystery moshnik. And watch what happens to these candles, because I think only you could do this. I think, your teachings, they're very capable of pulling that off. And so I'm going to put the next teaching and these next few minutes into your very capable hands and heart.
I think we were better off just watching the candles go up and down.
Okay, we can arrange for that. There we go.
Okay. So tonight I'm going to be teaching a mystical teaching from Rabbi Yoel Glick. But first, I'd like us to recite the blessing for the study of Torah. We'll recite that together. La'asok b'divrei Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Amen. So when God began to create the heaven and earth, the earth was being unformed and void with darkness over the surface of the deep, and a wind from God sweeping over the water. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning the first day. Now, the light of Hanukkah is the light of pure consciousness, the light that underlies all being and animates all living things. It's the light of the 7 days of creation, a light that is not a physical light, a light that makes all physical light seem dull. It is the light of the self. Now, since Rabbi Jeff borrowed from DDK, I'm going to borrow from Jeff. So it says in the book of Proverbs 20:27, Nir Adonai Nishmat Adam, the soul of man is the candle of God. Now, the role of humankind is to be the light giver, to bring the illumination of God into our world through the vehicle of consciousness, to light up the darkness of physical matter with the light of spirit, divine spirit. All the good that has been done by men and women over the millennia is part of this evolving process of illumination. All the works of creativity and beauty, all the acts of loving kindness, compassion, all the care and nurturing, all the struggles that humanity has undertaken both inwardly and outwardly to clear away the darkness are all part of this great task of light infusion. Now, Rebbe Nachman of Nemirov teaches that the light of Hanukkah has its source in the supernal Chokhmah, or wisdom. It's a light that is beyond intellect and the lower concrete mind. It's a light that cannot be pulled apart or analyzed, a truth that cannot be reached by reason alone. It's a light that awakens the mind to a higher awareness and makes everything we see vibrate with spiritual livingness. It is the light of inspiration that comes from the mind of God. Now, the key that unlocks this kind of inspiration is through meditation. The light of Hanukkah is the light of Ahava Shebei Ta'at, love in pure consciousness. Now, Rebbe Nachman of Bratslav compares this love to the love that a father has for a child before it's born. he teaches that when we touch upon ahava shebet, it's like a tongue twister for me, shebe da'at, we are touching upon the essence of love as it was conceived in the mind of God. It's the love that is above all other attributes, beyond the normal reach of the human mind and the heart. It's in this place of boundless love, in the mind of our Heavenly Father, that we are tapping into the festival of Hanukkah. It's the infinite love that's beyond time and space. It's the love that has no limitations. It's the love that encompasses all of existence and embrace. Ahava Shebe Da'at is the outward manifestation of the cosmic force of the infinite goodness that we have given the name of God. This love expresses itself in the universe through the power of the divine will. The more the divine will is revealed in this world, the more the world will be filled with God's infinite love and goodness. Now, we can take 1 drop of oil and turn it into a blaze that lasts for 8 days. It is this energy that heals sickness, washes away sin, and clears all fears and doubts. And it was this energy that purified the temple and led to the rededication on Hanukkah. It's this love animated that will emanate out from the temple and bathe the world in its radiance. It's this light that lies at the very heart of existence, for this light is the essence of God herself. Rebbe Nachman also teaches that our world is in its present broken state because the ahava shebe da'at, the love that exists in the mind of God for his creation, has not yet been completely revealed. However, he says, one day that love will become fully manifest in this world. And when that happens, the very nature of our existence will be transformed in a moment. The wolf will then lie down with the lamb, and men shall beat their swords into plowshares. And on that great day, when the blinding light of God, God's infinite splendor, is finally revealed, all the suffering, pain, and sorrow will vanish from this world forever. Amen.
Amen. Bayom ha'hu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad, which is basically the teaching. One day, one day, one day, one day, Bayom ha'hu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. One day, one day, one day, may it be today. Thank you, Mark. I was wondering during your teaching if there was an ikar, if there was an essence that we could distill it down to. And then you did it at the end. And Matisyahu's one day speaks to that as well. So thank you so much. We're going to turn the tables a little bit here, as I'm going to take a few minutes to teach you, to give you the secret. You talk about sod, Mark. The secret to the best potato latkes. Now, I don't claim to make the best potato latkes, but my daughter claims that I make the best potato latkes. And there is a specific secret to my potato latkes, not to be confused with the gefilte fish from a bottle that Bruce and Alessandra have been enjoying the last few days. And I've been trying to talk them into how frozen gefilte fish is much better than the bottled stuff. And then better than that is getting the carp, put in the bathtub, and beating it to death. And then, I'm sorry, that's not really what I was going to talk about.
Looking for it tomorrow. Frozen.
Frozen, terrific. Bruce, I await your report. So, again, my daughter claims I make the best potato latkes. Here is my secret, which may not be a secret, which you may already know. So, what are the basic ingredients of a potato latkes? And don't tell me that sweet potatoes are a basic ingredient of a potato latke, because they're not. All right, spinach, all of those other things that are added to potato latkes, that comes after the original potato latke. So what do we have? Of course, we have potatoes. Then a little bit of diced onion is always very, very good. Okay. What else do we need? We, of course, need eggs. Now, this is a very funny little story, is that our daughter moved away from the house, and she calls us one day wanting to know why her potato latkes are falling apart in the pan. What did you use? Oh, I forgot the eggs. Eggs, very important. Now, I always add a little bit of white pepper, just for a little bit of pizzazz to it. You don't have to, and that is not a regular potato latke ingredient. But what I do as well, and this is not a secret, because some of you might add a bissel flour or even some breadcrumbs to it in order to make it, to make it less mushy, for the potatoes, to bind those potatoes together. But the key, first of all, forget about the food processor. Put the food processor away. If you don't have a little blood in the latkes, that is not a kosher latkes. Bruce and Alessandra, I don't really mean that. I'm saying these things, what's kosher and what's not, and you might actually believe me, and Gail too. Gail's laughing behind. What the heck is he talking about? But
We've known
I
you
guarantee.
long enough.
Exactly. I guarantee you, hand-grated potatoes are the way to go, right? There's just something mystical about it, and Mark Kronish will be talking about that some other time, about the mystical nature of grated potatoes. But here's the key. First, grate the potatoes. You're asking a question. Do I peel the potatoes first? No, you wash the potatoes first, you fools. You wash the potatoes first, and you can either grate them or don't grate them. Either is great. Ha, ha, ha. I tend to grate my potatoes. Put your hands up if you're a potato grater. Put your hand up if you believe in not grating your potatoes. Ooh, we have a general consensus here. All righty, so here we go. Now you've grated the potatoes, which were peeled, into a bowl. You put some salt onto it, and then what? What do you do next? Somebody tell me, what do you do next? Devorah Lesk, what do you do next? I see you're putting your hands
Squeeze all
together.
the water out of it.
Oh, Devorah Lesk. Okay, but wait, you don't just pick up those potatoes, right, Diane Modell? You just don't pick up. What are you, in your limousine or something? I can't hear you. You're muted. You let the potatoes sit. Okay, you do a little meditation. You watch them. You maybe mix them around with your hands. What you do then is you make a hole in the middle of the bowl. You separate the potatoes to the sides, and guess what's going to happen at the bottom of the bowl? Ooh, water is going to settle. And so you take a spoon and you get rid of that water. And you're going to take at least 10 minutes to do that. So during that time, grate your onion. Ah, but I did it before. Don't do it before! You're going to have 10 minutes while you're getting the water out of those darn potatoes. This is the key to great potato latkes. Okay, now you've gotten as much. You can't wait all day. There's always going to be some moisture in there. Then you're going to throw a little bit, a shissel, a shissel of flour, or maybe even, what's that, panko in there. I don't use the panko, but I use a little bit of flour. I also throw in a little bit of baking soda. Or is it baking powder? I forget. Put both of them in. Nothing will hurt because they don't do anything anyway, and you won't know the difference. All right? So put or forget those things. They'll rise regardless. Then you got to put your oil into a pan, right? I recommend having multiple pans. Maybe 8 pans for each night of Hanukkah if you got a really large stove, right? And a lot of oil. Don't get stingy with the oil, Susan Chaya. You got to use a lot of oil. It is the holiday of oil. And Renee's listening to me, and she's thinking, oh, the same is true for making sufganiyot. Ah, those delicious donuts that Renee will be making in a few weeks, and I'm going to miss because I'm going to be at a damn meditation retreat not eating sufganiyot. But in any case, I'm getting off the point. What was the point? The point is that you got to get the oil really, really hot, and then you take like a little bit of the potatoes and you drop it in the oil. It's got to sizzle. It's got to sizzle. Don't start cooking those potatoes before the oil is sizzling. Then, right, and not too big a latke. I mean, you can have a latke the size of the pan, but that's not the point. The point is to have a lot of latkes, right? Judy's giving you the idea. How big is your latke? No, it's got to be bigger than that. Okay, sorry. There we go. That's big. It's not as big as a baseball. A hockey puck, but a small hockey puck. Okay, put it in the oil and then flatten it down, the top down a little bit, right? To flatten it down a little bit. It's going to be sizzling. While that's going, go for the next one. Put it next to it. The next one, put it next to it, put it next one, put it next to it. That first one that you put in is going to start to brown at the edges. Don't turn it yet! Wait until you can see the golden browning along the edges, almost lapping over the sides. Then you take your spatula. Take 2 spatulas. Because if you just take one, you're going to splatter oil all over your darn stove, and you're going to make a bigger mess than you intended to. Okay? So take like a ladle or whatever, not a ladle, just a wooden spoon and a spatula, and take those together and very carefully turn it over. Oh, look, it's golden. If I get French fries that are undercooked in a restaurant, I will send them back. Because I'm a New Yorker and I'm not afraid to do those kinds of things. So if that potato is not golden, put it back on that side, right? It's okay. It's really okay. Okay. And then you're going to flip it over. Those first potato latkes, when they're golden on both sides, they're going to be different from the last potato latkes you made. Because you got to watch those, because that oil is going to be so hot, and you might have to keep adding oil to it. Okay, so buy the giant size of canola. Do not use any of those don't use olive oil. No, don't. Even though the miracle was with oil beaten from olives, don't use olive oil, right? Use cheap oil, right? Use canola oil or cannoli oil if you like the Italian oil. Okay, and so that's all of my my Miriam, have you been listening to anything I said? Okay, good. Because it's going to be a test. You can't get smicha without knowing how to make good latkes. So are there any questions about potato latkes? Or is there anything that you like, especially, you think you make good latkes? I'm not the only one who makes great latkes. What's something you add that I didn't mention that you really like to add? Now, Sour cream, fantastic. Applesauce, homemade. Come over to our house. Caviar, the fake kind that you get at Rodman's, right? Get the fake kind of caviar. It's fantastic. You put a little sour cream on top, a little caviar on top. It's to die. It's to die from. To die from. What I see you have a hand up. Somebody, Devora, you have a hand up. What, Jeff? What do you put in your latke?
Donna adds a little bit of ginger.
Ginger.
It's phenomenal. It's really
Yeah.
great.
That's because she's a ginger baker. Wait a second.
No, you
She's
are
a
the-
ginger baker. Thank you very much. Judy, you got my joke. Mark Cronish, what do you put in?
I got
Well, I
it.
already mentioned in the chat we use matzah meal instead
Matzah, yes.
of
Matzah
flour.
meal is also kosher.
Yeah.
It's a different. If you can put matzah meal in, don't put flour in, and
Now-
don't put pan.
Listen, after you get the traditional curry potato pancakes are excellent. Just saying.
We are going to have to have a separate lesson on those.
Yeah.
Okay, well, listen, one other idea, and then we'll move on because this night is not going to be all stuyot. Devora.
Well, I actually do use a food processor because I lost too much skin and blood making them otherwise.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I use the exact same recipe you do.
Oh, well, that's comforting to know.
When did you
And
stop
by the way, I just
making
want to
them and
point.
just come to you.
By the way, I want to point out that you shouldn't use a food processor. If you're Canadian, you can use a food processor, like you said.
I always have to check my border before I speak.
Well, this is a good lead-in. Everybody, we're going to move on to, thank God, to our next teaching, which is going to be Devorah Lesk. And she told us a little secret before we got on with you, which she's going to share with you. And then we're going to say a bracha. She's going to say a bracha. And then we're going to say amen to her bracha. Devorah, what you got?
Well, it occurs to me that I have done some leading in recent years, but I have never done an actual teaching on Zoom. And so this is a first time for me to do it. And as I sit here, I realize I'm in the safest place I possibly could be to do this. So I'm going to say a bracha, the Shehacheyanu. Anyone could join me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehacheyanu v'kiyamanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh.
Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, Devorah Lesk. Watch the lights. Oh, you're a
So I'd also like to acknowledge, wow, that if you can't get smicha without knowing how to make latkes, I've already got that credit. Thanks, Redmar. So you're a hard act to follow, I have to say. I'm going to get a little more serious again from what you were doing, because I'm going to talk about how it came to be that we like the menorah in the direction that we do, as opposed to in the opposite way. So this goes back to a discussion between Shammai and Hillel. So quite a long time ago, you've probably heard about, what is that? You've probably heard about the scholars, Shammai and Hillel. And they each had a group of followers. So it was called the House of Hillel, the House of Shammai, or Beit Hillel, Beit Shammai. And they had a lot of discussions about many things. And this particular discussion was about the Hanukkah candles and which was the right way to do it. So Shammai started with the argument. So one thing that you need to know is that in the year, which was 164, I think, BCE, that the story of Hanukkah took place. It took place over a period of months. And in that time, they were not able to celebrate Sukkot. So at the point where they were celebrating the first Hanukkah, they were actually celebrating Sukkot as well. And so Shammai looked at that and he said, I think the way to do this is that you light 8 candles. You start out really bright, and then day by day, you can let the candles reduce one by one by one. And the reason he had that idea was because this is still in the temple times, so they had a sacrifice for Sukkot, and that sacrifice was to sacrifice bull. And it did also last 8 days. And the way they did it was they started with 8, and then then they went down to 7 the next night, and 6 or day, and 6 the next day. And so he thought that would be a good way to do it with the candles. With the bulls, the sacrifice of the bulls, by the time they had done their 13, 12, 11, 10, all the way down to 7, they had sacrificed 70 bulls. And Shammai pointed out that the 70 represented the nations of the world. And if you start with 8 candles and you go down, so using that same method, that I think this is a really beautiful analogy. So if you go down, so let's say 8 represents the 8 represents all the nations in the world. And as you go down and reduce one by one by one, when you come to the last day, you have 1 candle left. And that represents unity, where all the nations have come together. So those were some of Shammai's arguments. He also looked at it and said, if you're going to fight evil, then you start out big. Start out with a drastic step. And so if you're going to deal with darkness of any kind, whether in yourself or in the world, start out big. Kindle all your lights at once. And then that will drive out the darkness, and you can gradually reduce day by day by day, but you've had a big impact. And so that was basically his suggestions on several different areas. So, of course, you can imagine Beit Hillel had different ideas. So Hillel said, start with 1 candle and build up. Because when we're growing, when we're making changes, you start small. You can't start out in a huge way. You need to start small. To make any kind of change, you need to start 1 step at a time. And so you start with 1 candle. And as you look forward to more and more growth, you actually have more and more candles as you go through the 8 days. And you're looking forward then at what's coming, more light, more light, more light, as opposed to where Shammai looks at it, you're getting less and less. So you're kind of looking behind because there was more light before. Now, Hillel also says that in temple times, you could battle the darkness head on because they had the power of the temple. But in exile, without the spiritual power of the temple, you needed to take smaller steps in order for anything to be effective. So his approach was small, manageable steps, day by day, light by light. And the changes generate a good deal of goodness and light. So that was his approach. So Hillel and Shammai were known for their conflicts for the sake of heaven, machlochet l'shel shamayim. They had a lot of discussions like this. And it wasn't necessarily that the two of them were arguing, but they had their communities, and the communities would get into the argument. And so in this case, while it appeared to be about candles, it was on a larger scale more about holiness and our lives and our purpose. And so we know who won, because we traditionally light candles, starting with the first one and going up to 8. So it was Hillel whose argument was the winner. So as I was preparing for this, I thought I needed another teaching. And I had my first Hanukkah miracle, not last night, night before, going through my computer. I found this little audio clip of my great teacher who I learned from. I learned Torah study. I do Torah study with, and I've done for the last 4 years since COVID. So Rabbi Jeffrey Siegelman, I don't know why I had it. I had no idea it was there. It popped up and I went, oh my goodness. And I had to email him to make sure that this really was his. And he said it was. So I'm going to share it with you because I think it's really cool. So when we light our menorahs and we light them in front of the mirror, or the window, we know what it looks like. The question is, when we're outside and we're walking by and looking at the menorah, what does it look like? It looks backwards, right? It looks wrong because we're seeing the other side of it. So the teaching of this that he shared is that we can use these lights, the Hanukkah lights, as a lesson for us in looking at people. We are all really quick to judge, and we may look at someone and criticize them for certain things or think that they're doing things wrong. But what we don't realize is that we are looking from the outside. And if we could look from the inside, we would see why they're doing the things they're doing, why their relationships are the way they are, why their life is the way it is. So we need to take that as a lesson that sometimes what you look at looks backwards. You need to step back and wonder, what is it that I'm not seeing? Where do I need to shed more light on this? So I want to wish you all a wonderful Hanukkah.
Thank you, Devorah. Much appreciated. You know, all of these teachings tonight, take them with you, and for each night of Hanukkah, you can share a little teaching based upon the things that we share this evening, which was my intention all along. Without further ado, you know, Miriam Wolfson is fairly new to our community, but I pray that she'll be with us for a long time to come, especially if she continues to dress herself up like a dreidel. And so, Miriam, you know, in introducing you, I chose some dreidlach. So, Miriam Margot Wolfson, let's spin those dreidels!
I have a little dreidel, I made it out of clay. When it's dry and ready, oh, I shall play, oh, dreidel, dreidel, dreidel. I made it out of clay. And when it's dry and ready, oh, dreidel, I shall play. Just for fun. Am I sharing the right thing? Yeah. Okay, are you seeing my dreidel screen?
We do.
So what if you could be a dreidel? What kinds of things would dreidels remind you of? You could be a dreidel. I'm totally a dreidel. And I used to do this with my kids and spin them around and see how they land. It's so much more fun than just spinning a dreidel. But seriously, there are some amazing teachings about dreidel. So this is gonna be interactive. By the way, Yasher Koach, that was the most fun recipe I've ever heard. And Bora, I really enjoyed your teaching. So it's beautiful.
Thank you, Miriam.
And I came a little late, so I didn't hear some other folks. I'm sorry. Yeah. So what else spins beside a dreidel? What else could be spinning? Just stream of consciousness, no wrong answers.
My head when I've had too much to drink.
Yeah, your head could be spinning, right?
I don't think this is a rhetorical question. You can unmute yourself and answer, Miriam.
Yeah, you can unmute and answer. This is interactive.
The clothes dryer.
The clothes dryer spins. Excellent. What else can spin? Hopefully your cat's not in it.
The world is spinning.
The world is spinning, the whole world. Reb Nachman of Breslov said that, and you can be a dreidel and you can spin too. No, in fact, that the world is a rotating wheel. The whole world is like a dreidel. And he's talking in the 1700s, around 1800. Everything goes in cycles, revolving and alternating. All things interchange, all things from one to another and another. The high get low, the low get higher. And this all reminded me of a great song by Don McLean, slideshow from, no, in order to play this, I have to make it full screen. And hopefully it didn't link. All right, so I told Rabbi Mark that I would sing it if the clip didn't work. I feel like, hold on. Boom, boom, mama. I feel like a spinning top or a dreidel. The spinning don't stop when you leave the cradle. It just slows down. How you gonna keep from turning from day to day? How you gonna keep from turning your life away? And I feel like I'm dipping and diving. My sky shoes are spiked with lead heels. I'm lost in this star car I'm driving, but my air soul keeps pushing big wheels. Well, then you're in the way of the words. And as you grow, each thread of life that you leave will spin around your deeds and dictate your needs. I feel like a spinning top or a dreidel. Spinning don't stop when you leave the cradle. It just slows down. And that's not even all of it. You should totally look that song up. Going back to Reb, whoops, I went too far. Going back to Reb Nachman. Revolving and oscillating. Isn't this cute? This little kid holding revolving and oscillating. Something can be on top, a head, another on the bottom. Then the situation is reversed. The head becomes the foot becomes the head. This is my favorite. A human changes into an angel, and an angel becomes a human. Are you getting up and feeling like spinning yet? What could you change into? What about those letters of the dreidel? Well, you probably know these two reasons for the letter on the dreidel. Nes gadol haya sham, except in Israel. Does anybody know what the dreidels say in Israel? Go for it.
Ho.
Nes gadol haya po. Heidi hi hi and Heidi hi ho. And you probably know that the dreidel can be gambled with, and yeah, you know all that already. But did you know that it could also stand for the mystical components of the universe, the Hylies, the pregnant nothingness in the world, but it's ready to give birth to something. The Nivdal is the transcendent. The Gilgal is the celestial. And finally, the Shin, which is a losing hand in a game of dreidel, is Shafal, the material world. And as they spin around, one changes into the next, changes into the next. It's so much fun. What else shifts, changes, and spins? Well, pretty much everything does. And this is from Reb Elliot Ginsburg, my teacher. There is an ever-shifting fluid nature of everything. Empires rise and fall. Species evolve. Social class can change. What about our turning when we went to Sinai? We were transformed spiritually. This is a redwood tree with 3 baby redwood trees growing out of its decaying body. It becomes the new trees. Old becomes new and the new becomes old again. Or the way our bodies return to the earth and become part of a broader chain of life. And I'll just quote this from him because it's so beautiful. In this sense, we are truly part of a vast wave of, that's supposed to be weave, I think I mistyped, of interbeing, the ebb and the flow of the one. All because of a dreidel. Samson Raphael Hirsch, mid to late 1800s, wrote this beautiful turning. Water, after having penetrated the soil, is collected into clouds and seas, where it falls back down again as water. Light, after bringing forth plants out of the earth, plants, those children of light, is also in the sun, the moon, and the stars. Seeds come out of the earth to become fruit so that the earth will receive in order to give back again. Thus, one immense bond of love, of giving and receiving unites all human beings. And I would venture to say all creatures, including those beautiful seeds. None exists by itself or for itself. There is a constant striving of each creature on behalf of the whole, and the whole on behalf of every creature, in order to attain the full attainment of its existence. And so Yud He Vav He, God's name, stands for love, say our sages, because this relationship of supporting and giving is none other than love. And the best, I say for last, the essence of creation is to unify, to spin things into one another. This unification, giving spirit to matter and embodying spirit, brings delight and playful pleasure to the Holy One of blessing. So when you spin that dreidel this Hanukkah, you are giving delight not just to your children, not just to your grandchildren, but to Shekhinah herself, the Holy One of blessing. I had a little dreidel, I made it out of clay, and when it's dry and ready, oh dreidel, I shall play, oh dreidel, dreidel, dreidel. I made it out of clay, and when it's dry and ready, oh dreidel, I shall play. And so spin yourself around. You can put letters on, you can put letters on your kids, and take that spin and see where you land. What fun, and you'll be giving God some delight.
Oh, dreidel, I shall play. Thank you, Miriam.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
Thank you,
Thank you,
thank you. So we are coming in for landing, and I would like to offer a teaching that I hope will be meaningful to you all, and that you will carry on and pass it on to someone else. So we begin with something very, very familiar to you. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. What does it mean? Well, basically, this is our mantra, right? To say that Yud He Vav He, that our God is one, indivisible, right? But let's take a look at the number of letters in this entire pasuk. Shema Yisrael, together is 8. Yud He Vav He is 4 more. Eloheinu, 13 through 18. Adonai Echad, 1 through 25. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, our mantra, 25 letters. Now, what does it matter that it's 25 letters except the fact that the first night of Hanukkah is the 25th day of Kislev. So perhaps a kavanah that we can hold with us, not just on the first night, but all the nights of Hanukkah, is this, that behind the veil of duality is the one light, the Or Ein Sof, the never-ending light, that binds us all together, in which we can see the B'Tselem Elohim, the image of God, in each other. The battle against the Greeks was a battle of Ein Od Milvado, meaning there is nothing other than God, nothing other than Yud He Vav He. All is within, Mimale Kol Olmim, Vasovev Kol Olmim, and all surrounding and consuming and embedded within and without is this holy presence. Now, the Greeks believed in a multitude of gods made in the image of man. The Jews fought on behalf of the Jewish God, Adonai Echad, in whose image man and women were made. So they are quite different. There's your dreidel, depending upon which side of the dreidel it falls on. The Hellenists, the Greeks, celebrated the physical excellence of man, while Torah emphasized spiritual perfection. The war against the Greeks was a war on behalf of the oneness of God, Adonai Echad. If you recall, what does Judah Maccabee shout out? Whoever is for the Lord our God, follow me. I'm not going to go into the reality that we have placed total emphasis on the spiritual climate of Hanukkah as opposed to the military victory, because that was not the thing to do when we were living in nations that were suspicious of us. To boast about our military victories, probably not a very good idea, and so the rabbis bent it in the other direction. Their war against the Greeks was a war on behalf of the oneness of God. There wasn't one God who fought wars and one to worship in some temple. There was only one God, who was the God of everything, the material, the physical, all four worlds, and more. It was God who led the Hashmoneans to military victory, and it was God who made the oil burn for 7 extra days. That's our sacred myth. The 25 letters of the Shema correspond to the 25th day of Kislev, the first day of Hanukkah. The victory over the Greeks, both physical and spiritual, pronounces, and perhaps this can be a kavanah for you, on the first night of Hanukkah. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad underscores all of Hanukkah, and we light our menorahs, our Chanukiot, with this kavanah, with this in mind. Which is not a bad moment to point out that we have been referring to the menorah as a Chanukiah, or in this case, Chanukiot. Many of us, probably most American Jews, refer to it as a menorah. But all menorahs are not Chanukiyot. Well, Chanukiot are menorahs. So you hear the word Chanukah, right, which means dedication. It makes sense that the lights that we shine and what we use would be a Chanukiyah. So that is my teaching for this evening. And I'm going to keep this in mind. I love this idea of keeping in mind the unity that who spoke of at the end. I think maybe Devorah, it was you in your teaching, but it's kind of woven its way through all of the teachings tonight of seeing the image of God in each of us, right? And certainly seeing it in ourselves in the word nefesh and the way that Reb Jeff broke it down. Okay? And Miriam, in your teaching, how things change, and the more things change, the more things remain the same, and that spinning top could be going forever, perhaps. Nes Gadol Haya Po. It's a miracle that we're even here to be telling this story.